Let's just paint a quick little picture of where this all was. Curtis, the listing itself was on the marketplace as a traditional listing. It had been on originally and then it had come off and then it had come back on. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we went on for a very short time, came off, and then when we were back on the market, we were back on for about 4 months. We had very limited showings. It was owner occupied, and so it was tough to sometimes accommodate showings or even tough to do open houses. So when we were able to show, or we did have open houses, we did have very good feedback and interest. We were sending out disclosure packages, but with some of the changes in the market and that being higher end for Willow Glen, it was a little tougher to get buyers to come forward. So it just sat, and I could continue to follow up with the agents that were requesting the packages. I would invite them back to open houses or for another showing. We just had a lot of interested parties just sitting on the sideline.
Now, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. When I reached out to you on an email, because that was our first introduction to all,
Mhm.
you'd had a little bit of exposure to us previously from just Shannon. I think a couple. You said that you'd seen a few of the auctions. I think it was, or
Well,
several deals.
yeah, I had gotten some emails and
Mhm.
I kind of like checked you guys out and I thought, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. And then of course, when you reached out specifically on that listing, I thought, maybe this could be a really good tool for us.
Now,
So,
so let's talk through that. Like if we're being, let's be brutally honest here for a moment, because there's
sure,
probably some other thoughts that go through people's minds when we reach out to them. Because I often find that people are either very open minded like yourself and are trying to get the best outcome for their client, think, hey, I'm going
mhm,
to use all the tools that are at my disposal in order to get them the outcome they need. That was very much your view. But a
absolutely.
lot of the agents get upset when we're basically calling them out saying, you haven't sold your house yet. Can we help you?
Right.
And a lot of people get upset with us about that, and it feels funny. Why do you think that is?
I think they feel like like they're failing, right? That they haven't sold it, and we don't want our sellers to think that we're failures and that we can't do this, right? But I think if you take the approach that I did and say, hey, I want you to have an open mind. This is another tool in my toolbox, right? And in the end, it worked out great. I mean, they were concerned, right? But I think that for me, thinking about it really strongly when you called or when you first emailed me was that we were having very limited showings and time for people. And again, people sitting on the sideline. And we would get so excited about a buyer coming through that seemed so interested and wanted the disclosures, and then all of a sudden wouldn't move forward. And I'm like, where did our buyer go? Like, this is the right buyer for the house, right? And so I just thought, what is it? Like, we had done two price reductions. They weren't large, but they were two price reductions. And I thought we could continue to do small price reductions and stay on the market longer. We could go off the market for 30 days and then try to reset, or we could do something, like the auction.
Yeah.
And so I just, sat down with my clients because we knew that we were going to get to the point where it was either we were going to do something, whether it was going to be another price reduction or the auction, but we were going to go off the market. And that was, as you know, we even did the auction a shorter span
Yeah.
than you guys normally do because
Yes.
we were limited on vacation times and them going out of town. And so it was like, okay, once this date hits, we're going to go off the market. And then we'll decide when we'll go back on the market. It could be 6 months. So,
Yeah.
and I just didn't want them to go through that. Like, one of the things that they said is, even when we had limited showings where we had a period of time where we wouldn't be able to show it, I'm like, do you want to go off the market? Because then it would reset. Adam was just like, no, because people could see that, right? On and off, on and off. And, how does that look? So he said, no, let's just leave it on.
Yeah. I want to talk about the conversation that you had with the sellers themselves.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is that when you first brought the concept up, can I ask about that initial conversation? Because a lot of agents have butterflies in their stomachs when it comes to, having that conversation with their sellers. Hey, I'm suggesting something
Right.
new. They might even say, well, why didn't you bring this to me in the very beginning? All of those different things. Can we talk about the different things that ultimately that you might have like went through in that conversation, or the thought process that you went into that conversation with?
So I brought it up with them when we looked at what their options were going to be. We talked about, do we do another price reduction, which could be a larger price reduction?
Mhm.
Do we just take it off the market? Do we look outside the box? And so I just asked them to have an open mind and consider outside the box and how this could work. And of
Mhm.
course, I had a whole list of things that you and I had discussed on all the positives. So I went through all of those. In the beginning, they were, a little cautious and they just said, it just seems kind of desperate. Like
Mhm.
that was their first reaction. Like, we're just not sure when you say auction, it just seems like it's falling apart. Like, they have to sell type thing. And so they weren't sure how they felt about it. I said, take a couple of days and talk about it. And then let's talk again and then set up a conference call with Ben. And so they said, okay. And we had a showing at their house. And so afterwards, I stayed after the showing and we were talking. And Adam said, "Oh, I think we'd be open to the auction." And I said, "Oh, great!" So they just thought about it, and I think they again thought outside the box. This could be a good tool.
Yep.
And then we set up the conference call, and I think overall that conference call went well.
I was in Australia at the time, I remember.
That's right, you were, yeah. So it was a good conference call, and they were all in.
I think that Geraldine, the thing that I think a lot of agents think is that it's a long drawn out process to get people to agree to auction. Now, I think you've gone about it in the right way in the sense that you've given them options and you've given them different tools and you've let them think on it. But as soon as they actually hear it from the auction team perspective and we take them through the details and stuff along those lines, I'd say as far as that, 95% of the time a seller will say yes because it's so logical, so to speak.
Right,
Yeah. And
right.
and and at the end of the day, our fee being 0.5%, it's so much less than what the price reduction they'll probably were going to have to do anyway to provoke the interest.
Exactly. And the thing is, and you know how I feel about that, right? I had no problem giving up that part of the
Mm.
commission. I felt like it wasn't fair to go back to the client and ask the client to pay for it. It's a tool that I'm offering them and bringing you guys in. And I had absolutely no problem
Yeah.
paying it out of our commission.
Yeah, no, and I hope that people hear that because something is better than nothing. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the bottom line is getting it done for the client sooner, right? So that we can get it done. And in the end, everybody is happy, they're closed, and they can move on versus sitting around wondering what's going to happen in the market, staying off the market, and then saying, oh, well, should I stay off for 3 months? Should I stay off for 6 months? Should I wait to go on until next year?
Mm.
So, and it just confuses them. So I think overall, it was a great experience for them. They were very, very happy with the experience. As you know, when I told you how happy they were with you and said they would write, give you a testimonial, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It's been they were fantastic with it. The thing I do want to dive into though, once we went live on the market, one of the things that we do is that we reach out to everybody that was previously interested. And the funny part about that is that one of the people that had been really messing you around, I would say, Geraldine, and again, we're not going to name names or do anything like that, but realistically, they were certainly giving you the runaround. They'd shown some interest and they hadn't shown some interest. The interesting part, yes, we got some new interest in the property as soon as we went as an auction. There were some new people that came in, some new
Right.
blood. But the old people that had been sitting on the fence, man,
Yep.
did it make them move, didn't it?
It did. It did. And I was amazed at how quick people came forward and how many people had already seen the property, either, as a showing or at an open house. And
Yeah.
they were back. And it was like, great.
Yeah. Now, the experience with the negotiation, that was an interesting thing that I want to just touch on quickly is that they originally made an offer. They originally made an offer of, I would say, at the beginning, it was a lower offer. We won't go into the depth of those numbers, but
Right.
realistically, they made the offer and they basically were like, take it or leave it. We're not going to come to auction. And when I spoke to you about that, and I said, hey, just I want to be clear on something. This always happens. They
Mhm.
will walk away and they'll pretend they're not interested. And we just went silent. We went dark at that point, and then we waited until we got closer to auction day at that point, and then they come running back in to try and get it before the auction actually occurred. And that
Right.
was really the characteristic of how it happens every single time. Our bidding to start from was $2.8 million on the property. We ended up closing for $3,305,000. And realistically, I think that that was their original offer was below $3 million. To get them all the way to $3,305,000, I think was a tremendous effort. But it was was probably down to the leverage that it created, this anonymity of auction date that was approaching. That was one of the real things that you and I certainly worked
Right.
together on, because they originally had finance contingencies and then they removed those to get to stop the auction.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, with the agents, the ones that did have interested buyers, they wanted to stop the auction because they were all like a little afraid of going to auction, right? It's
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
my buyer doesn't want to go to auction. And okay, then come in with an offer to stop the auction, right? And they're used to traditional, counter offers and, negotiating that way, right? And that's not how the auction works. And so that
Correct.
was hard for some of them to really understand. In the end, it worked great for us and everybody's happy.
I think that the thing that was interesting though, because we had several people talking or verbalizing offers before the auction, and
Right.
some of those were lower than the 3,305 that it sold for. I think that that really helped Adam, well, helped the sellers in total. I believe that like really come to the conclusion that, hey, this is probably the best one, because they were head and shoulders above where other people were, and that's the benefit of auction, is that we get the chance to make a decision before the auction day, versus taking it all the way through to auction. But that fear of auction day is perfect in the sense of getting things to happen beforehand so that we can paint a
Right.
clear picture.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
you would think sometimes, that with the auction like yours, you get to see what those people are bidding, right? So when it goes to auction versus when you are in a multiple offer situation and you don't know what people are bidding. So you would think it would be a little bit more, uh, that the buyers might say, okay, well, I'll just wait,
Yeah.
right? But really, they just they didn't want to wait. They wanted to come in and see if they could secure it. So
Well, that's the if we're on the other side of things, Geraldine, and you're representing a buyer, that is the ultimate negotiation strategy for auction. Happy to share it with
yeah,
people. Is just say to them, "I'm happy to go to auction," because you should go to auction, because you see what the others are bidding and all of those things. But I will say this: is that you will pay more on average on auction
right,
day. If we've got competitive bidding, we'll get between 8 and 12% more, and that's just the nature of the way that the competitive nature of people is. But that said, is that so many people are afraid of it that it gives us the best of both worlds. We get to put
right.
people in transparent competition versus the other